We're all in business for a reason. The problem that so many small business owners have is they go in 10 million different directions, not really sure which way to go. Listen as your team of experts, Jennifer Glass and Patricia Reszetylo, go through what you need in your business to really make it stand out and benefit you. Because it's the bottom line that matters. Hello and welcome to another episode of It's the Bottom Line That Matters podcast, where we are dedicated to your success. If this is the first time you're checking us out, thank you so much for listening. If you are a returning listener, thank you so much for following us for so long. Now, if you have been listening to us for a while, you probably heard us talk about SOPs, those standard operating procedures. They really are an important piece of your business that you need to be thinking about, but they become even more important when you are an established business. Now, here's the big thing. After 5 years, founders face a brutal truth. Plain and simply put, the hustle that built your business can now break the business. These SOPs, the standard operating procedures, like we said, they're really no longer about corporate bureaucracy. Instead, they are the only way for you as the entrepreneur or business owner to buy back your personal freedom and scale. Now, when you think about these SOPs, and if you've heard our episode that we did with Adi Clavit a little while ago, it really is important to remember what SOPs are. But Patricia, let me ask you just high level, if you were going, without making somebody go back and listen to Adi's episode and other times that we spoke about SOPs, if you were to just quickly, 15 seconds, give or take, define SOPs for people that may not be aware, how would you define that?
So an SOP, which is shorthand for standard operating procedure, is really the nuts and bolts of how you're running the business. Uh, what departments do we have? What is each department responsible for? What is each position in there? Each team, what are they responsible for? How do they do it? How do they how do they do it?
And I'm
And
going
you,
to add one more thing there that is really, really key. And the reason that you have these SOPs is not just that you have a hierarchical chart in the business. It is rather if you leave the business, you sell the business, you go on vacation, someone is able to open up this document and see, I need to do A, B, and C. Done. It does
yes,
not require you giving instructions all the time. Do this, do that. So, Patricia, let me ask you, when we think about these SOPs and we think about a business's 5 year mark, which is our focus for today's show, what are some of those things that you, as the founder, the business owner, are dealing with that these SOPs can potentially start loosening your requirement being involved in the business?
yeah. Well, in order to achieve a certain result, I've spent time figuring out the best way to do a thing. Now, if someone comes along and figures out a better way to do the thing and get the same result, great. I'm all for it. Let's update the thing. The other thing that it does for me is it sets a standard, a metric of how to do the thing so that you have something to judge it against so that we don't get drift. We don't have standards that start slipping. We don't have good people that start going because nobody pays attention to what they said because the standards were slipping. And they're proud of their work. They may not be an owner, but they're proud of their work. And they want to be with somebody who maintains the standard. They don't want to be somewhere where, well, okay, I guess we just all slack off now and sit around and smoke or drink soda or whatever the case may be. So it helps prevent drift from the metrics and the quality and how things work. A good example of this is walk into a McDonald's. Everybody in there, you can take a teenager off the street and you can put him in there, train him for an hour or so, and he can be making something in there. And we know if he's performing well or not, given our SOPs and our metrics. It's a system, and an efficient business runs in a system. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And by the way, I just have to say, I love the idea you smoke or drink a soda. It's like, yeah, instead of scrolling on your phone, doom scrolling, whatever,
Whatever,
you're
right?
smoking or drinking a soda, but hey, um, it's all good. Had a laugh at that when you said
I
that.
guess it's been 20 years or so since I've worked in a outside the home kind of office. And so I've forgotten what people would probably be doing now. They'd be smoking, drinking, and scrolling. But
Yes. Okay.
whatever that leisure activity is, they're
Yes.
doing it. And you
All
don't
good.
want that.
Yes. And for those of you that shop online, a different thing too. But putting that aside, couple of things that you really want to be thinking about again as it relates to you as the founder or the business owner in the business. And in the very beginning, everything that you touched is what allowed the business to grow, right? You put your stamp, you put your flavor into everything that the business did. The emails, the social media posts, everything that you were doing, you were putting out there in that way. But the truth is that as the business gets older and it grows and you've got people working there, if you have to be the one that is still approving every single email, every single post, every single phone call, voicemail, whatever it is, it does not allow you to really be growing the business and it creates an operational bottleneck for you in the business. That is another reason these SOPs are so key in that regard so that you can be focused on what it is that you are trying to ultimately do. Another thing that you really want to also be thinking about is also how much of that knowledge is in your own head as opposed to documented.
Yes.
And this is really, really important. And that's one of those areas where SOPs can be beneficial. So, Patricia, if we're talking about tribal knowledge or internal, the founder owned knowledge, how would you even look at that?
Well, and that's something that I'm looking at right now as I'm working on putting the restaurant together. Um, my chef, so let me back up. I'm located in northern Minnesota. The restaurant will be in northern Minnesota, at least the first one. Chef lives in Chicago, or will be living in Chicago. That's going to be a real commute. And I'm pretty sure his wife wouldn't be real happy with him spending 3 or 4 days every week here. And it's going to be a real bear of a thing to do. Never mind expensive. So we will have him come over. I don't know. We haven't set up a period, but he has to be able to come over for a period of time, train people, um, and then have that knowledge also stashed somewhere else in an SOP of some kind so that they can say, well, what was I supposed to do here? Oh, right. This is what it is. Look it up, whatever. Um, because he doesn't want to be on the phone every day, all day, talking to him. Even if we have monitoring devices in the kitchen, which is completely possible, the guy needs to have a life. Also, Patricia will need to have a life at this property. I am not going to be in there
No.
working every day. No, that's not going to happen. Totally not happening. Um, and so the stuff that's in my head, I'm trying to get it scooped out and stashed somewhere so that even at this stage of the program, so that my AI can access it in an intelligent format and I can preserve the stuff that I've scooped out of my head as a backup because now it helps me write copy and it helps me write emails and it helps me write all of these different pieces. So it has to be organized somehow. The way you end up organizing it depends on what kind of business you have, your employees, how they're going to access it, all of these different pieces, but it's got to get scooped out because you don't want to have to be there 24/7. You
Right.
did not start your business so that you could be a slave to it for the rest of somebody's life.
No, you did not. And that's exactly why several weeks ago when we did the making yourself obsolete in your business, that was a really important part of that episode. And we're just continuing a little bit more in that flavor. But I wanted to throw out something just that you understand how easy this can be. Because Patricia mentioned the chef needing to write things down so that you know how to actually do it in the kitchen. And it can be as simple as the recipe cards. How do you make this sauce? You use this as the base, you put in these vegetables, you put in this amount of salt, sugar, and everything else, and then you stir it and you cook it over a low flame for an hour, 20 minutes, whatever it is,
Right.
and done. That is how easy that kind of SOP can be. It is standard. That's what it means. That is what we are making. If you start having to recreate the sauce every single day, something is going to break because the sauce yesterday and the sauce today can taste totally different. And you want your customers, your diners, to feel like they are getting the same kind of food every time they come, not different. That's why Patricia mentioned McDonald's because it is even clear you cook the burger on this side for so many seconds, cook the burger on that side for so many seconds, put this amount of pickles, this amount of lettuce, this amount of tomato on the bun. You flip the bun in a certain way, close the wrapper in a certain way, and give it to the diner. That is exactly what you are trying to ultimately do when you are creating this. The other thing also is consistency in the business, like I just said, creates valuation and scale. Because when you can really see that consistency, Patricia mentioned the first restaurant at least is going to be in northern Minnesota, meaning that there is a possibility of a second, third, fourth, etc. location that is based on, again, what was started in the first kitchen. Think about the major chefs. And I'm just going to throw out there Gordon Ramsay, Guy Fieri, Bobby Flay, all of these major people, Wolfgang Puck, all of these major chefs, they have an exact recipe, an exact operating manual to how to operate in each of the kitchens. And they have executive chefs that then manage the process in the kitchens. But that is exactly what we are doing here and where we need to focus on what it is that we are doing. So, Patricia, if it's okay, what I want to do is I want to jump to our 60-second actual test that I want everyone to please do. So if you're driving, please pull over the car or listen to this episode again later. If you're sitting there at your desk, you're sitting elsewhere where you can actually focus, stop whatever else you're doing and really focus, please, on a couple of pieces that I want you to consider. And there's three questions that I want you to answer honestly. The first one is the sick day test. And that is if you woke up tomorrow with a sudden illness and you had to go completely offline for 2 weeks, what happens to the business's revenue? If your sales stop, your marketing freezes, or your clients leave because you're not there to personally hold their hands, you do not have a business. You've got a very stressful, high paying job. The next question is the text message tally. And that question is how many times per day does a team member, freelancer, or client text, Slack, or email you a question that starts with the words, how do I? Now, if you're answering, how do I log into this account or how do I handle this refund more than 3 times a day, you're the bottleneck. Every one of those pings, those reaching out to you, is another sign that it is a missing SOP that is stealing your strategic thinking time, and it can be put into a clear SOP. The next one is an onboarding clock. If your best employee walked out the door today, how many weeks of your personal time would it take to train their replacement from scratch? And here's the big thing that you have to be thinking about here. If that thought makes you sick because their knowledge is in their hand, your business is literally a house of cards. As a business, no matter at what point, especially at the 5 year mark, but no matter what point, needs a repeatable training system, not a dynamic personality dependency. Go back, listen to these questions again, because I guarantee you there's going to be a lot of gold in those questions as you think about your own business. So, Patricia, if you were going to wrap up our conversation, how would you wrap up the idea of SOPs, especially that 5 year business mark?
Well, especially at the 5 year mark, you have explored a number of ways to do the things that you do, and you've come up with good ways to do them. And you need to write those down so they aren't living just in your head, so that you can train those new people, you can train your AI or whatever on how to do these things so that you're not being the bottleneck. This does a couple things. One, it lets you train in new people quickly or quicker. And two, if something happens to you, the business doesn't come to a screeching halt.
Absolutely. It is so important in that regard to really be thinking about what it is that you're doing there. It's that, like Patricia said, the business does not come to a screeching halt. And just going back on those questions, if you did get sick at any of those questions, it does not mean that something is wrong. It simply means you're still operating a startup inside of a 5 year old, 10 year old, 20 year old company. It's time to start thinking differently and to make it better for the business, but it does not mean that all hope is lost. So just start making those SOPs, and you too can start seeing significant improvements based on how well you put everything into play and implement with your team, right? It's not just you write it down and it's all done. You need to actually implement and make sure everybody knows this is exactly what you're doing. On
Yeah.
that note, this has been another episode of It's the Bottom Line That Matters. And until next time, here is to your success. Thanks so much for listening to another amazing episode of It's the Bottom Line That Matters podcast. We're all about helping the small business community grow and reaching as many people as we can. And the algorithms on the podcast programs love reviews. So if you loved what you just heard, consider leaving us a review. And even if you don't, I'm sure you already did, but consider sharing our episodes and our podcast with your friends and colleagues. Sharing is caring, and here's to your success. Thanks so much, and have a wonderful day.
It's the bottom line that matters.